Sorry, the title is probably quite brutal, but if you give me a few minutes, I'm not going to take too long. I'm going to explain what I mean and why it is important for us to finally grow up. And especially this video is directed to those of you who have been victims of emotionally immature and toxic parents that are having difficulty showing up in their lives. And many of you will say, what do you mean grow up? I've always had to be the adult. Have I ever done anything else than grow up sooner than I should have done? To which I will say, it is true. You probably had to be the adult in the room because your parents were so emotionally mature that you had to sort of step in. But in reality, you never got to develop and fully grow because you weren't modeled how. So you basically just pretended to be an adult when really deep down, you're still a child that wants to be guided, that wants to be loved. And most importantly, it wants to be chosen. And most importantly, it wants to be saved from your life. That nobody ever actually saved you from your past. And you kind of had to figure out a way to do it for yourself. So in this video, what I want to talk about is the reality of how we grow up and what the steps are. But before I do that, I'm going to have to do something with this light because it's going to make me blind by the end of the video. Much better. I'm going to lose my eyes now. So, as I said, when somebody tells us, oh, you got to grow up, it's pretty brutal. It sounds pretty mean as well. But what we actually mean is to grow out of childlike consciousness. Basically, the mentality of a child that relies on magical thinking, waiting on being saved, falls into despair, feels agencyless. Basically, when we don't feel like we have the responsibility of our own lives and the ability to change them or lead them, it's basically what it means to be a child, really, right? So we find ourselves in these positions where we're kind of like chronically reliving our experience as being a child that is waiting to be saved, helped, guided, whatever. But really, we don't want to get out of that because it's almost like it becomes our safe place. I remember the other day I met somebody who said to me, they're like, oh, I have this dog and she's so needy that I can't leave the house and I'm not able to work. It's been 3 years. And I'm like, the way that my brain functions is when you present a problem, my brain's like, here's a solution. Like it feels easy to just say it, right? So I said, well, I don't know, get her a crate. Oh, so all right, well, get her another dog. Oh, no. And then I said, I said, get another cat, get somebody to keep her company so she doesn't eat the house when you're gone. And then he said something for that too. And then I'm like, all right, this person doesn't want a solution. They just want to stay stuck in a problem. But, my mind is like, why are you presenting me a problem if you don't want a solution? I don't understand. I don't understand it. Because all my life I've been the kind of person that if something happens, I have to figure out a solution, right? This is not necessarily always a good trait because sometimes I'm trying to find the solution to people that are unresolvable. It's not everything has a solution and some things are the way they are, which is what my mind struggles with accepting sometimes, right? It's always like, if this is happening, I have to solve it. There is a solution. And of course, going down the path that I have gone with hypnosis and learning about the subconscious mind and working with people and really finding what is the issue and how to move out of it has created this idea in my brain that every single thing that we're going through has at least a root cause. Now, some of it we can get to the root cause and not necessarily solve it. But I have found that sometimes just getting to the root cause is enough of a solution, right? And so for me, that person later on said something like, oh, I don't really like working. I love just sitting at home and doing nothing. And I'm like, oh, there you go. She's not the reason why you don't go to work. She's the excuse. But, like the root cause and the root thing there was like, this person didn't want to work. And now it's supposedly because of the dog. And now they're trapped. Anyway, you get what I'm saying, right? So what I want to talk about today is how are we going to start growing up and what does that look like? Because growing up doesn't just mean I'm going to work, I'm renting a place, I'm in a relationship, I'm having kids and all of that. Growing up is more of an internal process that has also some external milestones. Yeah, right. Like finding a job and paying our bills and buying a home and doing all these things that society sort of deems adult like milestones that we have to kind of achieve. But in reality, growing out of our childhood consciousness, it's more of an internal process of how we view and approach life. Now, one of the main characteristics of being in childhood consciousness, as I said before, is magical thinking. So you will see that sort of show up in your life when you're dreaming about solutions just falling from the sky. I always say, people who are like, oh, when I win the lottery, I'm going to do so much. I'm thinking to myself, I don't know. I've never thought when I win the lottery. First of all, I just don't think that's how money gets to, I don't know. I just feel like, what are the odds? You might as well do something else that is actively going to bring you money rather than wait for that and sort of attach yourself to that. But so it's magical thinking that, I don't know, tarot readers or you saw a sign and that means whatever, or just miracles, prayers, the things that are like very abstract, but you can just interpret them the way that you want. And there's this magical element to things, oh, the universe is working in my favor. God loves me. Everything is happening for me. Life is bliss and unicorns. And obviously there's a lot that we could do with our mind and develop some more positive mindset. But this kind of magical thinking is like we get completely out there and we're not in reality, right? So everything we see, we're like, oh, it's because the universe loves me. And it's like, dude. Also, it's a little bit self-centered to think that the universe loves you. What about the rest of the people? What is this universe sort of like? What is it? Is it your parent that loved one of your siblings and not you? What's the deal with this universe? But anyway, so we have magical thinking. So we're expecting things to miraculously change, while we don't really actively do anything about it. And we also believe that we will be saved, somehow saved. There's this rescuing fantasy that aligns very well with, romantic fantasies, right? It's like we're going to meet this person and then life is going to be amazing. And we're going to feel so good being in our own skin because this person is looking at us and they exist with us and all that. So the first sort of sign that we are in this space is when we catch ourselves living too much in the possibilities of our wishes rather than the realities of our present time, right? So it's like, let's say we live in the middle of nowhere. We are not working. We're not learning anything. We have no skills. We're not trying for anything, but we're just sitting there fantasizing that one day we'll be a famous, musician, and we will perform in a great concert that's going to be packed and all that. And we don't even know how to read one note, right? So it's like there's a lot of dissonance between what we dream of that will happen in our lives and what we're actually doing about it, right? And that is residue, a big residue and a big sign, as far as I'm concerned, that when I see it also in my clients, of childhood trauma and neglect and abuse. And it's actually a very important element of those of you that resonate with being in limerence, right? So you're infatuated and obsessed with people that you barely know, and you may, just say hi to them once a week when you just meet them on the train or whatever. But when you're at home, you're thinking so many things about them, and that you're married and you have kids and you probably named the kids and stuff like that, right? So we kind of we go out there, we fantasize so much. But when we look at reality, it's like, this has nothing to do with that. Enter, of course, whatever you guys are hearing about manifestation, manifesting SP, pretending as if, which is, it has a solid explanation that neuroscience can sort of really back up and say that we can actually alter our reality based on our thoughts. But we can kind of do that when we're already pretty grounded in our reality, right? And in a mature mindset, or else we will go over to the other side and completely live in our fantasies and disconnect from the world, and also create such a huge distance between us and reality that we will become reality aversive, right? We'll just fear reality, fear anything that has to do with reality, and isolate ourselves further and further from what can actually pragmatize and happen in our lives. We can't, because we're not building the skills, the life skills required to go for the things that we want. We just want to dream and wish them and pray for them and magically manifest them rather than actually go for them. And I don't know if one day I get so sort of blissfully enlightened that I truly can see how that can happen without us doing a single thing. But for the current time being, I've seen my life transform only in the times that I've joined, having these sort of like practices where I'm envisioning things and I'm writing them down and I'm really planning, but also I'm putting in a lot of work in my actual real life. So when these two combine, it's a powerhouse of change. But anyway, I guess I'll be talking about this in further videos, but I want you to know that when you have such a big difference between where you are and the life that you're dreaming about and you're doing nothing, you're maybe stuck in your childhood, home, because that is something that tends to happen when we're abused. We create fantasies to get us out of the abuse, right? So everything is bad and we're like, one day I'm going to be famous and everybody's going to love me. Or one day I'm going to find a Prince Charming and he's going to love me. Or one day this, one day the other. So it's almost like there's a story that makes us feel good about who we are, but it's only based on an imaginary future. That also, if we do pursue, when we do find it, we're like, I did all of these things. I still feel like a horrible person and that I'm unworthy. Which brings me to the issue that we need to be addressing today. To really grow up, we don't just have to become the big version of ourselves and just an adult and stop daydreaming, but also we have to do the most important thing, which is, in my opinion, to grieve our past. Grieve and accept that our childhood is over. But to do all of that, we have to be able to see and no longer suppress and deny what happened to us in our childhood. Because so many people are in complete denial about what happened to them. They're like, I forgive my parents, and they're going around, but they're just repeating their past. You can't accept a past that you're in denial for. And you can't forgive also people who don't really ask for forgiveness, and it means nothing if you say, I forgive them. So you can't just bypass the whole childhood experience, because there's something really powerful that happens when dealing with our childhood trauma. When dealing with our past, the past that we actually have been trying to change our entire lives, we've been compulsively trying to change it our entire lives, is when we do go back and we do see what happened and we do grieve all of that and we do believe something different than what we assumed then. In the process of doing all of that, we find ourselves. We remember who we were, we remember our gifts, we remember our strengths. And the other thing that happens is we create so much capacity to be with ourselves. And so we're no longer running from ourselves. So we have to go back in order to go forward. And then the trip alone of going back equips us for the journey to life, which is a journey that, in my opinion, gets increasingly harder in terms of the losses that we will encounter, right? Because when we're kids, the grievances of childhood can be a failed childhood and all that, but also small little things like losing a toy or our best friend says something horrible to us. But then as life grows, we have bigger and more massive losses that we aren't prepared for if we're still grieving a little pink bicycle that somebody broke, So it's almost like we're going back and developing the resilience and the strength that we need to cope, but this time in a healthy way, because we are resilient enough to cope because we've managed to survive our childhoods, right? But all of the coping mechanisms are not entirely healthy. For the most part, they're avoidance. And so we never created the capacity. So we have feelings or we are stressed or all of these things, and we're just wanting to run away. We want to run away from our bodies. We want to run away from our experiences. And it's just brutal. I remember once I was noticing my body, something was happening. And I felt so stressed just looking at what was happening, that I felt the urge of just want to get out of my body. I was like, I don't want to be here. And I just really I just focused on how do I get out of here, kind of thing. And I was just noticing how this is something that I do generally in my life, right? I avoid the things that make me uncomfortable, which is for me as a part of my own journey of growth has been not only to face my past and the pain of the past, but now purposely do the things that make me uncomfortable, which I don't like them, but I am doing them because I have to kind of like push myself to be okay with this type of discomforts and staying with it. It's almost like, and also when they're controlled discomforts, it's easier to deal with them, so that when the uncontrolled ones come, maybe you have some more capacity and skills to deal with them. And so this is very important. This is the biggest part of doing the work to become an adult, is to grieve your childhood, to grieve the past. And hold on, where's my list? Right, so we face what's happened, we grieve the past, and as an effect of that, we stop running from ourselves. And we stop running from ourselves means, again, we're like, all right, so now I know what happened to me. Now I know what my parents did or they didn't do. Now I know all these things, and now I have to sort of stop running from myself and the responsibility of myself, meaning I know who to blame, kind of thing. I know where to place my anger. I know what really happened. I feel validated. I feel like, the righteous anger that I'm supposed to feel. But healing out of this and fixing this and recovering from this is going to be my job. And I say this because many people will go to their past, figure out what their parents did, or just, sitting in therapy, just intellectualize about, oh, my mom used to do this, my dad used to do that. And then you hear them keep going back to their mother and keep going back to their father and trying to build a relationship with them because they expect this parent to fix them, right? And I will tell you that I've never seen someone who broke someone to then put them together. The person who broke you cannot put you together because they are the ones that broke you. Like, it's just impossible for them to do that. If they had the power to break you, that means they will not have the willingness to put you together because just the trust is gone. The trust of, going to the person that caused you all this harm and expecting them to just change so that they become nice and fix you is very unsafe territory, because they will always go back to their old ways and you will always be susceptible to be hurt over and over again, right? So it is very important to be able to understand and hold these two truths of, yes, my parents did all of these things, but also my parents are victims of victims and my parents had their own mess. Yes, they should and could have done better, but they didn't. And now I have to become responsible for myself, and I have to stop demanding them to become the parents I needed them to be, which, is a process of its own, to stop expecting your parent to become the parent you needed them to be because you feel like you're owed parenting. Because you're like, who's going to parent me? Well, this brings us to the next step of how we're going to grow up, and that is to basically reparent ourselves, which sounds, again, unfair. You're like, that was one thing that others had to do for me, and now I have to do for myself. Yes. What are we going to do? If we deny the responsibility that we have to raise ourselves up to better standards and to give ourselves better foundation, better beliefs, better view of who we are, nobody's going to do it for us. And we will always wait for a parent in the form of partners, guides, mentors, gurus, whoever we're looking up. But they're not there. And when we become the parent of our parent, we're essentially telling ourselves, you know what, I got you. We're going to do this together and we're going to figure it out. And I'm going to teach you what I can teach you, and I'm going to coach you through things, and I'm going to help you out, and I'm going to support you, and I'm going to get us the support that we need. I'm going to learn the things that we need to learn. And we do all of this not because we're compulsively trying to fix ourselves so that we can become worthy and our parents love us or somebody chooses us, but we're doing it because we're like, you know what? I deserve to get a better childhood. I can't change the past. So let me treat myself to a second type of childhood, but in adulthood, right? Because reparenting ourselves doesn't mean we just go out and play all day and we're just little kids in the park and playing with our Barbie dolls to remember of our childhood. But reparenting ourselves is really being kind to ourselves as we are learning through life, right? Because adulthood is this big curve of challenges, of learning, of difficulties, of responsibilities. So how we treat ourselves in that process is going to sort of formulate a different experience of the self within. But that comes only after we reparent ourselves from our childhood wounding, which is, us coming in touch with our younger parts, our little inner children, and then developing all of that empathy that I mentioned before, which then upgrades to what I said afterwards. We take ourselves to adulthood. So we never really stop reparenting ourselves. But essentially, the relationship internally changes, right? When we first start our healing work, to accept the past, to grieve, to process what happened to us, the reparenting attitude is more so, what do you need from me? How can I fix this? How can I make you feel better? Blah, blah, right? It's all very loving and unconditional and with a lot of empathy because we're dealing with a childlike version of ourselves. But as we grow, we're like, listen, I know you don't feel like working out, but you got to do it. I know you don't feel like cleaning the house, but you got to do it. I know you don't feel like speaking up and saying this thing to this person, but we got to do it, right? So you see, it's kind of like it's a different way of being with ourselves and talking to ourselves and helping ourselves through challenges that nobody taught us how to deal with, or whatever they modeled was possibly very problematic, which is why we struggle. So, which brings me, or basically I've already said it, is we have to follow through. When it's boring, when it's hard, when it's just we don't want to do it because growth isn't sexy, is uncomfortable. And we have to push ourselves through discomfort, but not through abusing ourselves. It's really through pushing ourselves, but coaching ourselves through doing hard things and doing the things that we said we're going to do and doing the things that we need to do, right? So following through is very important and pushing ourselves. We don't have to feel like we like it, or we don't have to feel like, oh, I feel like doing this. No, you don't have to feel like doing it. If you said that you're going to do it, you have to do it. And the other element that is important for us to truly grow up is that we essentially sort of see ourselves as the adult that we would need back then, right? It's almost like we become the role model of the person that we used to be, not only because of the potential gains, right, of how we look or what kind of car we drive or how much money we make, which I'm not sure we would have been role models for our younger selves, but it would feel good for our confidence to think that we made it in that aspect. But the real role model of a younger you is possibly a you that is cool and kind and supportive and listens and understands, like you're just that cool person they always want to talk to. That's the person that you kind of need to become. Adding to that, whatever successes you want to pursue, whatever things you want to pursue, but just know that you won't be respected more for your achievements by a younger you as you would be respected or sort of like able to connect more deeply by being a present force within your own system rather than a horrible, sort of like judgmental voice that keeps telling yourself, you're not enough, you're not doing this, you're not doing that, right? So that's pretty much it. So these are the steps for growing up. So you face what happened, you grieve the past, and you grieve all of that fantasy. You take radical responsibility of your own healing. And that means you go to therapy, you pick up the books, you get the course, you get whatever it is that feels like, oh, this is going to help me. And you do it. You don't just say, I know what my trauma is, but I know what this is, but, well, what are we going to do now? What are we going to do if there's always a but? Like we really have to, the bridge I think here is for you to understand that even if you know why you're struggling the way that you are, if you're still struggling so heavily, you probably just intellectualize the problem. You just know it in your brain and you keep saying it and it just becomes a new story. But what really needs to happen is to feel it. And we feel it if we really do deep inner child work. As you possibly already know, if you follow me for a while, I have a beautiful hypnotic journey that has 21 guided sessions that are going to transform your life. But are they easy? No. Some of them are not easy. Some of them are empowering, but some of them are going to be really hard. But whoever said that healing is easy and grieving the past is easy, or looking at our pain is easy. But what I have seen is that when people truly allow themselves to experience those stored emotions and have these cathartic moments where they're crying and just letting it out, then there's more space. Then the stories kind of like die down because they have no place there. They're gone. The stories have been kept strong because of the feelings that were associated with them. But when the feelings are gone, the stories just dissipate. So I have that, but there's all sorts of things that you could do. But inner child work has to be one of your main practices because you need to really feel things. You need to remember things. You need to feel things so that you can actually process them. And that's what taking radical responsibility for your own healing looks like. And then you reparent yourself. And lastly, I want to say that you will have to eventually sort of break the loyalty to your old identity. It's almost like you're going to write a letter to say goodbye to yourself that got you here, to the survival self. And you're going to welcome a self that is no longer living in survival, in your childhood home, in your childhood consciousness, in victimhood, in agencyless, in helplessness, in fear. And that's like somebody that you will you will start defining as you heal. But that will be sort of like, it feels like a new identity, but it's almost like just releasing the false identity, the survival identity that you've turned into what you think is yourself, but it's not. So that's it for me today. Time to grow up. Lovingly, I hope it was loving enough. Sometimes I come off a little bit cynical with things, but I'm going to tell you that I'm this way with myself. Eventually with myself, I'm like, right, yeah, no. Mm-mm. Right, so that's it for me today. Time to grow up. And I hope I've given you some ideas on how to start doing that. If you want to check out Heal, it's going to be in the caption. And yes, get to work and let's just go out there and live the life that we were meant to live, because we've wasted enough time trying to recover from our childhoods, right? We spent a lot of our adulthood doing that, and it's time to kind of like start working towards it a little bit more intensively so that we can create space and start living our lives. Because we deserve to live our lives out of survival, and we deserve to live our lives without holding on to that burden of the past constantly. And we deserve to live our lives feeling what it's like to be ourselves, but responsible for ourselves without that feeling like a burden, but like a privilege. Because it is. That's the privilege of freedom and agency to be your own person, make your own decisions, and create your own life. I'll see you guys soon.